Video games have a sort of unique problem compared to other forms of media. While music and film can be preserved and played on pretty much any modern device, many games are locked to a specific gaming console. Some of these games could also really use help, whether that be updating their graphics, streamlining their control scheme, or simply just making the game accessible in English. The most effective way to make sure these games aren't forgotten is to either port, remaster, or remake the game on modern systems. There are so many RPGs that could benefit from these, but today we're going to be looking at 10 of the most deserving of them, with only one entry per franchise. Otherwise, this list would probably be full of Shin Megami Tensei games. Any games that are playable on any modern system in any way aside from emulation are excluded. Let's start with Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade is the 6th entry in the Fire Emblem franchise, releasing for the Game Boy Advance in 2002 by Intelligent Systems. This entry never received an English release, despite it being the game featuring the popular Super Smash Bros. Character, Roy. It was the 2003 prequel to this game, Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade, that got to be the first Fire Emblem title in English, titled simply Fire Emblem. While there are still 2 other earlier mainline Fire Emblem games that have not yet been remade, Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade would be my choice, simply because it is Roy's game, and Roy still retains his Smash Bros. Popularity to this day. Perhaps the game could simply get a translation for the Nintendo Classic series, or maybe it could get a remake similar to Fire Emblem Gaiden, with Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia for the Nintendo 3DS. However, Intelligent Systems doesn't seem to be re-releasing their older games as a priority, so this one might have to rely on fan translations for a while longer. The Last Story on paper is a remarkable game. Directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of Final Fantasy, and music done by the legendary Nobuo Uematsu, the game was released in 2011 by Mistwalker, Sakaguchi's independent studio. It was also the target of Operation Rainfall, the goal of which was to release 3 Japanese-exclusive RPGs for the Wii in North America. These were Xenoblade Chronicles, Pandora's Tower, and The Last Story. The campaign was successful, with all 3 receiving a North American release. Xenoblade would become one of Nintendo's flagship RPG series, but The Last Story and Pandora's Tower have been mostly forgotten. Any game with as much talent behind it as The Last Story has deserves to be played today. Parasite Eve is a 1998 RPG developed by Square. Released in a rather experimental phase for Square, Parasite Eve and its sequel are currently locked to the PlayStation 1. Parasite Eve was renowned for its cinematic experience, iconic main character Aya Brea, and its soundtrack, done by Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts fame. The game was also unique in fusing horror into an RPG, and had a shocking opening scene. However, the PlayStation 1 graphics can be a bit rough nowadays, as well as its control scheme. The series hasn't seen a new entry since 2010's The Third Birthday for the PSP, so it seems this series has become a forgotten one, unless you're a Bring Me the Horizon fan. A remake, perhaps combining the first 2 games into one, would be excellent for this title. A Shin Megami Tensei game had to be included on this list, and my personal choice would be Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, with the first entry released for the PS2 in 2004 by Atlus. Atlus is one of the better companies in terms of remaking and re-releasing their games. with them remaking both Persona 3 and Raido Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army within the last year. A remaster like the one Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne got in 2020 would also be more than enough for these games to shine. The voice acting, characters, battle system, and world are well above any of its peers. I trust Atlus to eventually get to these. The atmosphere in these games is something people need to experience. Bahamut Lagoon is a 1996 tactical RPG developed by Square and released for the Super Famicom. It never saw an English release and has relied on fan translations to be played to this day. The pixel art in this game is absolutely gorgeous, and the game has a charming setting featuring dragons and floating continents. It was one of the last games Square released for a Nintendo console before focusing on Sony's PlayStation 1. Another Square RPG never translated to English, Live Alive, received a remake in 2023, and their next project should absolutely be giving Bahamut Lagoon the same treatment. The HD 2D style that games such as Octopath Traveler, Dragon Quest III, and the aforementioned Live Alive have received would fit this game perfectly. Xenogears needs no introduction. Released in 1998 by Square for the PlayStation 1, this is the progenitor to the popular Xeno series, which includes Xeno Saga and Xenoblade. Xenogears stands on its own as one of the best RPGs ever made. This is one of the games on the list that needs changes the least. It could simply be ported to modern systems and be nearly perfect. Its graphics are absolutely breathtaking, the story instantly compelling, and the characters immediately likable. The one thing holding it back is that it is trapped on the PS1. Tetsuya Takahashi, the director and creator of the game, branched off and founded his own studio, Monolith Soft. With Square Enix presumably still holding the rights to Xenogears, it's hard to say if its time will ever come. The 3 Xeno Saga games could also be included on this list, and honestly would be more likely since Monolith has already re-released Xenoblade, and there wouldn't be any copyright issues. But Xenogears is still the absolute top choice for an RPG remake. Dragon Quest has been receiving quite a bit of love recently. Square Enix released an HD remaster of Dragon Quest III and confirmed another one for both 1 and 2 as well. Unlike Final Fantasy, most entries on this list are locked to older systems like the Nintendo DS. Among these is one of the most popular titles in the franchise, Dragon Quest IX: Sentinels of the Starry Skies. Released in 2009 by Square Enix, this game introduced a multiplayer mode that utilized the Nintendo DS's online functions. The game was massively influential, eventually becoming the blueprint for the Nintendo 3DS's Street Pass feature. Many think that this might be a roadblock to bringing the game into the modern era. But if overcome, this would be a great choice for a new generation to experience. The Shadow Hearts series is a prime example of a defunct series. There have been no new games in the series since 2005's Shadow Hearts From the New World. And the developer of the games, Saknop, also known as Nautilus, has also been defunct since 2009. There are 2 games that could be the choice for this one. Either the original game, Koudelka, released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1, or Shadow Hearts Covenant, released for the PS2 in 2004. Shadow Hearts Covenant is by far the more popular and flat-out better game, but it is the 3rd game in the Shadow Hearts series, being a direct sequel to 2001's Shadow Hearts. Koudelka would be the first game chronologically, and would benefit most from graphical updates as well. Even considering this, I would still have to go with Shadow Hearts Covenant as my pick. This would probably be the least likely title on this list to receive a remake, however. The rights to this game series belong to Aruze Corporation, later renamed to Universal Entertainment Corporation, and they have not published a game in almost 15 years, and recently filed for bankruptcy, at least in the United States. We will most likely just have to be content with the series' spiritual successor, Penny Blood, which was successfully funded by series creator Matsuzo Machida on Kickstarter, although no release date has been confirmed. Vagrant Story is a PlayStation 1 game by Square, released in the year 2000 to great acclaim. Developed by the same team that did Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story has a very similar battle system to the previously mentioned Parasite Eve, while also incorporating many puzzle and platforming elements. The battle system also allows you to target specific body parts for more damage. The game is also set in Ivalice, the same setting as Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII, although game director Yasumi Matsuno has walked back on some of these claims. Nevertheless, it was also referenced in Final Fantasy XIV as well. Vagrant Story is consistently called one of the greatest games of all time, and it deserves to be playable in the modern era. The original Dot Hack quadrilogy was probably the most formative RPG of my teenage years, so this is a biased pick. I love the characters, the storyline, and the music remains one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. The combat can leave something to be desired, yes, but a remake for this series combining all 4 entries into a singular game would be a dream come true. The quadrilogy, released from 2002 to 2003 by CyberConnect 2 for the PS2, was part of a larger Dot Hack franchise, with a sequel trilogy released a few years later. This trilogy, Dot Hack GU, was remastered and re-released in 2017, and that was the last we've seen of the franchise. The game series is based on a fictional MMORPG called The World, and had you navigate message boards, email systems, and the launcher, as well as actual in-game gameplay. I love this series, and this would be the one that I would want to come to modern systems the most. There are numerous other games that have been forgotten over the years, and it is a real shame that it is so difficult to easily play them in the modern day, outside of actually owning the console or emulating them. Leave a comment for a game you think would be a good fit on this list as well. Until they can get remade, I'll continue doing my part in making sure that these games are not forgotten.